Back in the saddle here after a little break. Lots going on.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
First mission is to shake off 5 pounds of vacation gain. Ugh. Never get on the scale after vacation. How bad is it? Oh, man. You know, it's bad enough they put a fat guy on television, but do you have to get fatter during vacation? I got on the scale this morning. Probably beer.
You look great.
I look great? Yeah. Thanks. You look great. And by the way, Kevin, our director, turned 50 over our little production break, so congratulations to Kevin. All right, so we're a little loosey-goosey as we jump back into this whole thing. Ratings for the repeat highlight shows the last 2 weeks were through the roof, so I think we're just going to do one show a week and just repeat them over and over and over again. How's that? Right? Works for you? Works for you? All right, glad to have you aboard. Ted Nesi has popped in for us this evening to be able to kind of catch up on some really important things. The governor's conference was significant, and the Mattiello Ruggiero thing is really significant, and then we'll talk about some other things. Here's the governor's conference headline. So Major League attendance turnout. This is, again, the thing that Governor Raimondo does well. She reaches out past the borders of Rhode Island incredibly well. She is not maintaining any kind of significant popularity momentum here in the state, but everyone outside the state thinks she's great, and when she invites everybody into the state for a short period of time, they all think she's great, including the guy who runs Canada.
Pleasure to meet with Governor Raimondo. Looking forward to a great conversation about all the strong ties between Canada and Rhode Island, and more talk about all our shared perspective and shared values in how we're going to be moving forward.
All right, I got a lot of things to say, but more in the form of question than comment. That's not true. I got a lot of things to say anyway. But Ted Nesi was able. I was on vacation gaining weight. Ted was working the conference, so he's got all the inside poop. You had great access, huh? By the way, welcome.
It was fascinating, Dan, as a reporter, because it's kind of like when you see the reporters in Washington who just chase senators up and down the hallway to get quotes. These governors, they got, I think, 32, 33 in the end of the 50 governors were there, and they were just walking around the Rhode Island Convention Center, and you, as a reporter, you could just go up to Governor Baker, Governor McAuliffe, Governor Walker, whoever, and just say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? I was asking some of them how you like Rhode Island. What's your visit been like? So as a reporter, anytime you can go right to the people who matter and just ask them your question without a lot of going through hoops and offices and security and stuff was a really interesting experience.
Convention environments are fun because newsmakers tend to be a little looser.
Absolutely, they were relaxed. You know, it was funny. One who said to me, might have been Governor McAuliffe, or one of the governors was saying to me and a couple other reporters how, you know, there's a camaraderie across parties when you have the same job. Mm-hmm. So the Republican governors, the Democratic governors, there's stuff they all disagree strongly about, such as maybe the health care bill, but other stuff about running a state is the same no matter, it's like Buddy's old line about the garbage, there's no Democrat, Republican way to collect the garbage, right? Like, you have to deal with emergencies, you have to deal with your legislature, which I'm sure they all can talk about what they think of their lawmakers. You have to deal with different budget stresses that come in any kind of state. So I think they kind of seemed to enjoy being together, not just because it was around, they would any place they had it, because they could kind of catch up and sort of discuss those things.
I buy in everything you're saying, but I would only point out, Kevin, I know we have a headline about the governors and the health care conversation. Pop that up. I don't think there is a big difference between party. The job, it might be that there's no Democrat or Republican way to pick up the garbage and to fix potholes. That's true. And I don't think, as we now go to a state-by-state level with the Medicaid argument so front and center in whatever health care reform they're trying to put together, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, but in general, governors, Republican governors, are freaking out about the Medicaid reset. I think by position, they're pretty much in concert.
That's actually a fair point, Dan. Governor Malloy from Connecticut, who's a strong Democratic governor.
Well, he had a lot to say.
Yeah, he said the meeting with Secretary Price was like full of, quote, BS, lies, misinformation. Now, he's a pretty partisan Democrat. You'd expect that. But he claimed that in the private meetings, there were closed meetings the governors had with some Trump administration officials. Governor Raimondo was in there to discuss and hear about the health care bill. He claimed there were very few Republicans speaking up among the governors in favor of it. A couple, he said, but a lot of them just looked, he thinks they're worried too because they have to deal with their budgets the same way that Rhode Island, Massachusetts, the more blue state governors do. And the argument the Trump administration made, as I understand it, behind closed doors was, we're going to give you flexibility, and so even though federal funding will be lower under this bill for Medicaid, you're going to be able to change the program so that it's cheaper so that that happens. A lot of the governors seem to say they don't buy it. Governor Raimondo, I think, quoted as saying, I don't buy it. But partly, I think, because they fear that, you know, if that doesn't come to pass, if the flexibility isn't enough and you are starting to look at just taking people off Medicaid, the governors, are going to be the ones taking the political hit and having to explain to their populace why we've got to, you know, take people off Medicaid or whatever, because the feds have sort of left the room on what their current commitment is. So that the health care bill. I was talking to actually the 2 New York Times reporters whose story you just threw up there, and they said often these governors' associations meetings are a little sleepy. You know, they're getting together in the summertime, a couple, you know, mom and apple pie issues discussed. They said it was much more intense because of the health care bill and the governors being kind of at the center of that debate.
Yeah, all right, we'll talk a little bit more about the overall picture on that in a little bit, but on the convention, you know, it's an interesting story in the Providence Journal today where some of the monies to support that whole project are identified. $250,000 from G-Tech, $250,000 from CVS. Twin River won't discuss the kind of contribution that they made, which, all due respect to Twin River, that's not right. There's got to be at least some semblance of friction between Twin River and the state of Rhode Island, and I see it happening less and less and less. And for them to be a contributor to this governor's conference, propping up the state, no doubt, and Governor Raimondo's resume, no doubt, unacceptable.
Yeah, it's a perennial question that comes up, and a very valid story that Kathy Gregg in the Journal did this morning, which is, you know, you see it when the Republican National Convention and Democratic National Convention happen every 4 years. A lot of that is underwritten by corporations giving big checks. You know, I'm sure those corporations love American democracy, but they also mostly have business in front of the government. They have business in front of these elected officials, contracts that are very important. And so undoubtedly for the average citizen, they say, well, good, I hope they got some things done for our states, you know, while they're there. But yeah, a lot of the folks walking around the convention who'd registered were lobbyists. You know, people who have business before the governments. I mean, IGT, the new name for G-Tech, they run a lot of those lottery systems for these governors. So there's no doubt they have their pecuniary reasons that they want to be in front of these guys and support the NGA.
Yeah, and it's just always this very interesting conversation between, you know, good corporate behavior, which is to contribute to a major project here in the state, and, you know, inside dealing. The formula is nationwide, so this is not some kind of Rhode Island specific problem. You point out conventions are often, you know, corporatized, so to speak. But it also makes me think that if the argument for these major companies to contribute here to this special fund that was put together is to promote and put Rhode Island on the map, a 3 or 4 day event has certain legs, has coverage, but our overall tourism effort in this state is so lacking, with a complete budget of $5 billion a year, broken up by vendors and this and that and the other thing. It just seems to me that there's a concept in terms of you know, promoting Rhode Island that seems to be wantonly missing here in this state about how much investment is actually necessary to get it done. My point is, if you can raise 7 figures worth of dough for a 4-day stint, well, the state of Rhode Island's taxpayer money has to be reevaluated in terms of investment, and the corporate behavior also needs at least to be nudged.
Well, I also think, you know, they may argue they're doing it primarily to help Rhode Island and because the state was in the spotlight in this, but
they're not.
You know, CVS, I'm sure, makes a lot of money in most of the 50 states off prescription drugs that are being sold to their citizens, their Medicaid beneficiaries, et cetera. IGT, again, the lottery. You know, so. Yes, you know, when your governor of your home state calls you, you take the call and you might be more willing. But they had reasons well beyond the Rhode Island border to participate in this specific thing with you know, more than half the governors in town. Yeah.
In summary, productive event, you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know, some of it's a talking shop. You know, Elon Musk, the Tesla CEO, if I can just briefly say.
He's full of it. There's no way that we're not going to have in 20 years, we're not going to have a steering wheel?
Not only that, you might get murdered by a robot, he says, if we don't regulate the artificial intelligence. He really, all the report, I was in the press corps with Kim Kalunian was there from 12 and Alex from NBC. A bunch of us were sitting there, and all of a sudden he says, I believe artificial intelligence is an existential threat to human civilization, and we're all, typing and snap our heads up. The room goes quiet, and then one of the governors pushed him on it. He said, "No, I hope it isn't before the robots are going down the road killing people that we rein in this technology."
I think he makes a well point.
It was
there.
it was jarring, but it was interesting.
In 10 years,
yeah,
before you turn 20, or no, in 10 years,
no
cars are
steering
going to be
wheel,
automated. And in 20 years, the steering wheel will be like horse and buggy?
I don't
believe it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Not in Rhode Island.
Well, I think these tech
That's for sure.
I think these tech guys sometimes
miss
the cultural aspect of that stuff. I have no doubt the technology will be there, but will people, like you're saying, will people want to not have a steering wheel?
Yeah. Try driving like this down the driveway. We'll be right back.
Well, we used to do it on our bikes when we were kids.
Big squabble with the Senate President and the House Speaker. He's all on it. So am I. Next.
Yeah, Musk. That was.
All right, welcome back. Oh, the two villains. You don't send me flowers anymore. All right, I thought these guys might resolve this when I went on vacation. They haven't. They haven't.
So we're on day 17.
So Speaker Mattiello will be a guest here on Wednesday, sitting in Ted's seat, fresh off the meeting that he's going to have with Senate President Donnie Ruggiero, and this is going to be, I don't know. I'm not predicting productivity from this. A long story short, the Senate tagged the budget with an amendment that causes an automatic trigger for the rainy day fund. Should the rainy day fund ever need to be used, it automatically stalls the car tax repeal. Car tax repeal is worth $40 million incrementally every year for 6 years-ish. It's $220 million out of the budget that they got to figure out somewhere. I still maintain a friendly debate with the Speaker that this was more of an election ploy than a policy move. It's probably a hybrid of both. But when they pulled that stunt at the Senate, last second, as I understand it, well, you tell me what you hear. Actually, Ted and I have had about 3 locker room conversations over this, so we know exactly what went on. Give me what you think is the insight as to what happened between these two guys. Then we'll talk about what you think will happen tomorrow.
So I reserve the right to change it based on further reporting, because it's hard to get everybody on the same page in terms of what happened. My current working theory of the case is there'd been a slow buildup of frustration on the Senate side with the House, this feeling that they weren't being, I don't know if you'd say respected, not given enough, they're not enough of their bills. Something they felt disrespected, not happy.
In general or on specific legislation?
In general, I think. Then on specific legislation, we've been talking about the paid sick days bill, a lot of wrangling over that at the last minute, which was a top Democrat, Mary Ellen Goodwin's priority. There really was much more vocal concern in the Senate all this year on the car tax, the cost of the car tax thing. So that wasn't a totally made-up issue out of nowhere. But I think it also then became a convenient way to sort of have this fight at the last minute. But I'm still 17 days later surprised it got that far. I mean, it was close to the nuclear option for the Senate.
Well, yeah, nuclear and tactical. So as I understand it, on this last day of the session, planned it anyway, and Speaker Mattiello was very high on making a commitment to be out of there by 9 o'clock every night.
No, that was his thing.
And he damn near got it done. I mean, so pretty good. So the Senate decided they were going to, on some of these bills that they didn't think they were getting any respect for, some of the rumblings, the new Senate president doesn't have the foothold that he'd like to have early on, right? So they were rumbling. And they threw this tag on to get their attention. But they wanted to get their attention at 8 o'clock at night. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to tag the budget, send it over, have the Speaker more or less flat-footed, committed to getting it done. It's 9 o'clock at night. Instead, a little birdie tweeted in his ear, not real tweeting, but the old-fashioned tweeting, that this was going on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he pulled the plug.
Yep.
Leaving the Senate president holding the bag. And I think that's it. And so the Senate President's running around talking about how financially responsible it's a complete red herring. His move is a complete red herring. Don't you agree? That on the budget, there's no look. If we have financial problems, they just don't renew.
Yeah, I guess red herring is a step past where I'd want to go as a reporter in my position versus yours. But I would say, it is interesting.
It is not the only mechanism to slow down the car tax repeal if we have budget problems.
And it's such a
strange one at that.
It's such a.
I'm going to get you right to red herring. You watch me get you.
No.
I'm going to pull you right into red herring.
I've done this show before, Dan. I know how not to get in trouble at 7:48 at night. My phone light. What did you tell New York? I think it's interesting because in some ways it's such a minor and unlikely to be used policy to have had this level of a fight over. I mean, as you say, it's only going to be used, the Senate amendment, when we go into the rainy day fund, which would happen during a major recession when last time they quickly took it back. So I'm not saying the words red herring, and I'm not going to say it. But I do think I can't dispute that it's not a kind of arcane thing to have this fight over.
He threw it in there to get their attention on the other bills, and it blew up, and now they have a problem.
Well, and then it's personalities, right? It's egos. I mean, you have two men who've both been who in positions of power, who both want to make sure their primacy is known. It was funny to watch how they kept. I was getting texts from people behind the scenes who were saying, every time one of them does an interview, they escalate when we kind of need them to de-escalate so we can sort this out. But I think it became kind of a mano thing, and now they've got to find, and their staffs have to find a path out that lets them both save face.
I wonder if the governor's conference not being on the schedule would have affected Gina Raimondo's involvement in this. I mean, her press conference a week and a half ago where she just said, I hope they get together, I thought was pathetic. What a missed opportunity for the governor's office to be able to at least play the political role of headbanger and to get two people together and say, damn it, I'm running this show around here, you'll fix this. If she had no role in it, and I don't think there's a Machiavellian Raimondo role here, based on my intel.
If it was poorly planned, if so, because the day before, or a day or two before it happened, she had a different news conference with the reporters to say what a great budget it is and why she was happy to sign it. So she wasn't setting the table well if this was the plan.
True.
I think, I guess my pushback on that would be knowing how frosty, particularly the governor's relationship with Speaker Mattiello is.
Oh, well.
Well, but, if she comes out and says, bang, you guys need to get together, forces them into something, does that help to actually, politically maybe it would be good for, but does it actually help solve the problem, or does it make one side or the other dig in further?
I don't know.
But there's no doubt, you're right, she made a choice to be very passive.
Yeah, I wish they would. I wish they would. And I don't think it helps her. I don't think it helps her re-election status. I think her mind works much more on prep for the NGA, National Governors Association meeting, prep for that kind of stuff, national, stay out of the weeds, stay out of the fight, that kind of a thing. And I don't know whether it bodes well for the state. Her re-electability, anybody's guess next year what's going to happen. But I was disappointed in her lack of political savvy and leadership there. No doubt Mattiello doesn't buy her act, but we'll see. What do you think will happen tomorrow? Do you think these two guys kiss and make up?
I'd love to be there. I'm still hoping I can find out where it is and sneak in the back, or put a waiter outfit on and pretend I'm serving them their meal with a fake mustache.
Okay. All right, so check this out. So I can't get him to say red herring. But he's willing to do that to get a story.
Tim White's taught me all the tricks of undercover.
Just saying.
I truly don't know. As I think you said earlier, and I agree with you. Because I'm not sure what they still need a final resolution. Just meeting up, Donnie, Nick, hugging and stuff. That's not enough. They need a plan for who's going back, who's passing.
It's going to require Ruggiero to pull the amendment back. It's going to require him to pull the amendment back. Mattiello is not going to. Mattiello can say, listen, we were going to get aggressive and match Senate language on the sick pay leave, the blah 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 blah. But the amendment has got to be pulled back, and we will negotiate these things.
If Ruggiero does that without seeming to get anything for it, I think of the Cuban Missile Crisis and how, JFK had to give back the Turkey missiles or whatever to get the missiles out of Cuba. So I think, and I'm not saying this is the Cuban missile, but two leaders both need something usually in this kind of high-stakes fight to take back because neither side wants to be the one that clearly
gets
lost.
the bills written the way he wants, which is going to cost another sick day, by the way, because the House version was less aggressive than the Senate version on the number of sick days. They get what they want. Mattiello gets the damn amendment pulled, and it all gets settled.
Well, don't forget,
Mattiello. I could do this over.
Mattiello has something
years.
to lose too because he values his input into judicial nominations, and the Senate controls judicial nominations. So I do think sometimes the Senate's position has been discussed, made to sound a little weaker than the Senate's position actually is. I think they both have things to lose by not finding an agreement.
All right. There's some stuff going on with the Trumps. Next. All right, so Donald Trump Jr. only met with the lawyer and somebody else. Now it's up to 7. What's your take?
I think the dribbling out of information is never a good when you have a bad story. To have it to look, especially when their first day or two was to say we've been transparent. I was astonished that they had an email like that. I don't know that I thought there would be that kind of evidence.
Let me show you a couple of headlines here on this. What? Next one. This is interesting. 2 out of 3 Americans think the meeting was inappropriate, but they're not ready to call this evidence of collusion. And I think that's actually pretty good instinct. I think we probably have another one here, too, about this transparency thing with the media. You know what? They keep bypassing, Donald Trump Jr. bypasses with the email and the tweets and the social media and all that kind of stuff. But there are some things that will come back to bite you and when you want your story told. They seem to have a cluelessness about how to get a story told.
Well, I also
that it's going to be either their incredible success or demise. I'm not yet certain to make that prediction.
Well, I don't know who is centrally knows everything. You know, it's like when you have a defense lawyer in a bad case, you got to tell your lawyer everything privately, so he or she can defend you properly, knowing what's back there. I mean, I was just reading the other night about Watergate, and what really killed Nixon at the end was when that last set of tapes finally came out, and it was the rage of people like Barry Goldwater, conservative Republican, the House Republicans who defended him, to find that they've been lied to, and they'd been defending him, trusting him, and then the tape shows he actually did. And I think this is the kind of thing that's going to make it harder and harder for the congressional Republicans to go out there and defend it.
You run to Fox, and like even the Hannitys of the world, who are all in. But you lie to them on an interview and say, "No, there's only and you find out there's 7 or 8 people."
People don't. I mean, in life, as in politics, as in news, people don't forget when you lie to them, especially on a high-stakes matter that you thought you trusted them. I mean, it stays with people. But I have no idea how this is going to go. I mean, I think the special counsel is probably the thing to watch right now because I don't see a lot coming out of the congressional investigations. I think it's whatever Bob Mueller's up to.
And it will be 6 months to a year.
Well, that's the thing, and that's going to worry the Republicans too. I mean,
Healthcare gets past the middle of that. John McCain's health episode aside, I don't think so.
It's hard to see. I mean, clearly this is slowing them down. They have problems already on the policy side, and then they're getting slowed down by this. And the longer this drags out, another thing that hurt Nixon is that by the time those tapes came out, they were just a few months out from the midterm elections when the Republicans that year got slaughtered.
Ooh, next year midterm elections.
That's right.
Good updates. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Was it a red herring?
Yeah, you're always a red herring, Dan.
I'm a red herring. Right back. Tomorrow, Professors Joe Camarano and Michael Kennedy on all that's happening in Washington, healthcare, how it relates to Rhode Island, and even the speakers' battle. All tomorrow. See you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.